Hello, good morning, and welcome to this week's Learn with Lorna. As is often the way, Facebook has changed slightly in the way it broadcasts, so if someone could say hello either to me or to each other just so I can know that things are going out as normal, that would be very much appreciated. Hi Anne, thank you for doing that, that's great. Hi Mike. So welcome to this week's Learn with Lorna. If you are joining us for the first time, it's really nice to have you with us. You'll find lots of people who will say hello. I had a lovely message last week from a lady who joined us for the first time last week from New Zealand, who was so grateful for the lovely welcome she'd received from everybody. So that was really, really nice. We've got a wee family going. If you are joining for the first time, my name is Lorna Steele. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Highland Archive Service. The Highland Archive Service has 4 archive centres, one in Inverness, one in Wick, one in Fort William and one in Portree, which together cover the whole of the Highland area. This series, as you will be aware by now, is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this event, but if you are able to donate towards our work, then we're very, very grateful for those of you who have been able to do that, and if you're able to going forwards, it really does make a difference to us, so thank you so much for that. This week we are moving on to June's theme of landscape and environment, and we're looking at a collection that we hold at the Highland Archive Centre in Inverness, which is the papers of the Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club, more commonly known as Inverness Field Club. This is an organisation which is still in existence today. I don't know if we've got any members of the Field Club watching. Say hello, say why you love the Field Club, why you're a member. And also I'm sure if any of the viewers have any questions about the Field Club, then if there are current members watching, they'll be able to answer that as well. It's a very large collection of records that we look after on behalf of the Field Club. It's around about 20 boxes, and in addition to that, a large number of outsized items. So things like rolls of plans, which are too big to fit in archive boxes. The collection includes all sorts of things, so minutes and rules and membership information, so things like that to do with the running and administration of an organisation, but also reports of lectures and excursions, publication material, all sorts of other variety of papers, maps, plans, photographs, slides, all sorts of different things. And if you follow the Highland Archive Centre Facebook page generally, then you will have seen this week some examples from that collection coming up on the Facebook page. So do, if you haven't yet, do go back and have a wee look at them. The collection dates from the 1600s onwards, but Inverness Field Club was actually founded in 1875. And it was founded with the aim of promoting scientific study and investigation, and to inquire into the geology, botany, natural history and archaeology of Inverness and the surrounding area. One thing to point out straight away at the beginning is that the use of the word science in the title of the Field Club had a much broader definition when it started. So science as in general knowledge and information and learning, as opposed to the kind of much narrower definition of science that we tend to use now. I'm seeing your message, Elizabeth. We won't get rid of you. We have no intention to get rid of you. We love having you with us. So the Field Club came into being like this. In November 1875, Professor Young of Glasgow University gave a series of 3 lectures in Inverness. He gave the lectures in the music hall on Union Street, and the reports at the time said that it was a full, the music hall was full of a very attentive audience. The lectures were given in connection with the Eccles bequest. This was a sum of money left by Miss Mary Eccles for the purpose of promoting science and art, and quite a few of the well-known and prolific people associated with the Field Club and with other institutions, similar institutions, benefited from the Eccles bequest. And so that was what brought Professor Young to Inverness to give a series of 3 lectures. The lectures looked at the landscape and geology of Scotland in relation to other countries. The lecture was accompanied by a series of maps and diagrams and rock specimens that were laid out at the front of the music hall for people to look at. And one of Professor Young's aims was to prove a link, really interesting, this, you have to tell me what you think about this, I think this is really interesting, to prove a link between the physical configuration of a country, so its landscape and its climate, for example, and that country's national characteristics and peculiarities. So to what extent did the natural environment of Scotland, the landscape, the mountains, the weather, have an impact on the inhabitants of Scotland? There was a report on this series of lectures that was produced in the Inverness Courier on the 4th of November 1875. And it said this, and if you know me at all, you'll know I love this. So the report in the Inverness Courier read like this. Although the lecture necessarily dealt in details and technicalities of geological science, the professor succeeded in making it wonderfully intelligible, and seemed to be followed by all his hearers with much interest into all the branches of his subject. Which I love, good man, that's exactly what I like to hear. So people who had gone there not understanding a huge amount maybe about geology or about natural environment, but because the person interpreting them made it intelligible and inclusive, the audience were able to understand much more and engage much more with the subject. I love that. So this series of lectures delivered by Professor Young was delivered on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and it was followed on the Saturday by an excursion to Abreachan, which is just outside Inverness, up beside the banks of Loch Ness, to research the areas of geology. Now it does report at the time that it was they were drenched in rain the entire time, but it was so much appreciated by everybody who attended that within a couple of weeks there were discussions about establishing a local scientific society. And there were letters in the newspapers, and I wanted to read you this entry from the First Minute Book, which records the kind of feeling at the time of the importance of doing this. So this is dated from the 17th of November 1875, and it says, Sir, a suggestion has been frequently thrown out as to the propriety of forming a scientific society in Inverness. The recent visit of Professor Young has revived the subject, and in course of the excursion to Abreachan, a proposal was made that steps should be at once taken to form such a society, especially with the view to the study of natural history, geology, etc. of the district by actual exploration. A meeting of those favourable to the proposal will be held in the Waverley Hotel on Friday evening the 19th of November at 7 o'clock, and we shall feel obliged if you could make it convenient to attend. So within a couple of weeks of Professor Young's lectures, there was that built upon an appetite to set up a local society. And so the Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club was officially founded on the 8th of December 1875, with its first public meeting being held in the January. Now there were some really key people at that first meeting, people who, if you have watched me talking over this last year or so, some names you may be familiar with. So at that first meeting, Dr. Thomas Aitken, who was the director of Inverness District Asylum, Walter Carruthers of Gordonville, who was an editor of the Inverness Courier, Mr. Galloway, who was a local chemist from Castle Street, William Jolly, who was the HM Inspector of Schools, James Barron, who again went on to be editor of the Inverness Courier, Alexander Ross, the architect, who I did a talk on, the rector of Inverness High School, J. Wallace, and W.B. Forsyth and Ebenezer Forsyth, who were members who were associated with the Inverness Advertiser. So you see there's representatives from education, from science as in the chemist, but also science as in medical profession, school education representatives, and representatives from several of the big newspapers of the time. And of course, as we've seen through this series of talks, all of those people have fingers in all of different pies. There's all sorts of connections there. And I wanted to read to you an extract from the Inverness Courier from the 9th of December 1875, so just immediately after the formation of the Field Club, that talks about the Society's objectives. Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club. An adjourned meeting of gentlemen favourable to the formation in Inverness of a society for promoting and prosecuting scientific studies, in connection with the district of which Inverness is the centre, was held at the Waverley Hotel yesterday evening with Mr Galloway in the chair. The committee appointed at the previous meeting, consisting of Mr Jolly, Dr Aitken and Mr Wallace of the High School, reported on the constitution and practice of similar institutions elsewhere, and the draft which they prepared for the Inverness Society was approved of. Mr Galloway having declined to accept office, Mr Jolly was unanimously elected president. Mr Ross, architect, and Mr Walter Carruthers were appointed vice-presidents. Dr Aitken, secretary, and Mr Hendry, treasurer. The objects of the Society are chiefly to hold evening meetings during the winter months at which subjects of interest in connection to the district will be discussed, and to make excursions in the summer to places of importance as regards geology, archaeology, etc. The President, Mr Jolly, has agreed to deliver an address on an early day, indicating subjects which he thinks may properly engage the attention of the Society during the next year. The public will then have an opportunity of learning specifically what is in contemplation to accomplish, and those desirous of becoming members of the Society will be invited to give in their names. So there's a meeting being held. They're laying out what they want to do with the Society, so a programme of evening lectures in the winter and summer excursions. An initial meeting before then opening it to the public to encourage people to join. Now that mentions an address given by the first President, William Jolly, and I wanted to share part of that address with you. It is a short paragraph that still features on the Inverness Field Club website. I love it. I feel strongly about it in connection to many subjects, but obviously from my own point of view in connection to archives. And it reads like this. Many good men are deterred from joining any scientific society by the idea that great erudition, much scientific knowledge and elaborate papers are asked for and are necessary to constitute efficient membership. Our objects as a local association are much less ambitious and much more human and sensible. We are all learners. I think that is just a wonderful way to set up an organisation and to open by saying you don't need to know everything to come here. You need to have an interest and we're all going to learn. I love that. And so people were encouraged to join, to study, to investigate, to explore, to learn about the district and to take part in that series of lectures and reading papers in the winter and excursions in the summer. And the members were split into ordinary members, honorary members and corresponding members. So you could be an ordinary member, which meant you were a resident in Inverness and the surrounding area. A corresponding member, which meant you could be non-resident but with an interest to support and be connected with the Society, or an honorary member. And we hold within the collection a large number of official documents from within those early years. So we hold minute books from 1875 onwards, the rules, the early draft of the rules and then subsequent revisions, membership rolls from 1875 onwards, secretaries' correspondence and working files from the 1890s to the 2000s. And those include subjects so widespread, so subjects from trees and iron workings and querns and stone circles, and then latterly in the Secretary's correspondence of later years, correspondence relating to heritage conferences and themed weeks. So for example, Medieval Week, Old Inverness Week, our Vanishing Heritage Conference. So a wide range of subjects really encompassing so many aspects of Highland life. And I wanted to read to you a report from the Nairnshire Telegraph from 19th of January 1876 that followed that first public meeting and gave some more details about William Jolly's address. I'm going to read it in full because it gives a really interesting insight into the mindset behind the Field Club. Inverness Field Club is the popular name given to the Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club, which was recently established in Inverness. William Jolly, Esquire, HM Inspector of Schools, its president, delivered an address in the Town Hall in Inverness on Tuesday evening on the materials for scientific work around Inverness. The address was a very interesting one. After pointing out the many unsettled and interesting points in geology in the counties of Inverness, Nairn, Murray and Ross, which would afford the most useful and inviting work for the club to help in their solution, and referring at considerable length to the charms of studying botany and the facilities afforded for it in the north, Mr Jolly spoke of the course the club proposed to pursue. Every month during the summer, they would have excursions directed to special points of interest in the neighbourhood. The expenses, being equally divided amongst those present, would not be great, and would be more than returned in the pleasure and instruction derived. Each excursion would be under the guidance of one or more of the party, who possessed or would prepare special knowledge of the route and the objects to be seen. He had been at many such field parties, and had found them uniformly pleasant, often delightful, and always instructive and interesting. The knowledge gained in this way had the advantage that it was real, and therefore valuable, because obtained by personal observation amidst pleasant and picturesque association, in beautiful scenery, and in the happy companionship of others who were like-minded. Then, in the winter, there would be the reading of papers once a month, with conversations or discussions upon them. They might expect some papers more or less elaborate, but the greater part could not be other than short and concise, and this he wished to be distinctly understood. Persons should not be deterred from coming forward by supposing that much scientific knowledge or great erudition would be required. The objects of the club are much more sensible, and as a society he might say that they united to use their own eyes to open the eyes of others to the things around them. He recommended to the society the securing of interesting popular lectures on scientific subjects, and by cooperating with the Eccles trustees, he hoped that this suggestion might be successfully carried out. He also urged the cooperation of the society for the establishment of a proposed museum and public library. In conclusion, Mr. Jolly advised every man that values intelligence and culture to take up one science at least and to make it a special study. We need, he said, such a means of broader thought and higher pleasure amidst the consuming cares and over-competition of public life. The effect of one such study to which we might turn our leisure would be of the most beneficial and elevating kind. It would extend our own knowledge and contribute something to the growing sum of human science, and it would be a moral protection against the narrowing and exhausting pursuit of gain and position, and a means of salvation in our idle moments when the devil is proverbially busy with the best of men. I love that. I love the mindset that's behind what they wanted to achieve. But I also wanted to read that in full because it refers to the establishment of the museum and the public library. And as those are now both within the High Life Highland portfolio, we run Inverness Museum and Inverness Library, I wanted to touch on that subject. After a quick reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer, that High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and that there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this series of talks. But as I've mentioned, if you're able to donate towards our work, then we are very grateful for that. Inverness Museum grew out of the Northern Institution for the Promotion of Science and Literature. It was founded in 1825 in Inverness by George Anderson, who was a local solicitor. Collections began to be built and developed, very diverse range, including an extensive collection of rocks and fossils that were given, relating to Cromarty, which were given by the famous writer and geologist Hugh Miller. By 1835, the Northern Institution for Promotion of Science and Literature was in financial difficulties, and it was struggling to carry the cost of running a museum. So they held their final meeting that year, 1835, and the collections were handed over to Inverness Royal Academy, who paid £80, which was the outstanding debt, and kept the collections in the Academy Hall. But as was perhaps inevitable, they gradually deteriorated within the conditions that weren't right to keep them in. And so in 1877, Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club took responsibility for the Inverness Museum collections. The land was donated by Inverness Town Council, and money was raised by public subscription to erect a new museum building, and contributors for that included Queen Victoria, of all people. The new building was designed by who else? Alexander Ross, of course. Opened in October 1881 with an exhibition that was so popular that it ran until December and welcomed over 7,000 visitors. Incidentally, it moved to its present site, for those of you who know it, in the 1960s, coming under High Life Highland management with the creation of the charity in 2011. But Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club played a key role in the story of Inverness Museum and Inverness Library. Now that early intention of the Field Club's aim to provide a programme of winter lectures and summer excursions is something which happened right from the start and something which still happens today. COVID aside. I'll just throw that in. And those have covered, the talks and the lectures and the visits and excursions have covered all kinds of subjects, from rock formations and hill forts. We've got some great drawings of hill forts in the collection. Geological features, archaeology, all sorts of different things. And within our Field Club collection that we look after for them, we hold a large number of lecture notes, excursion reports, files relating to the organisation and the promotion of both of those things. And I wanted to read to you an extract from one of these reports, which was an excursion to Craggy and Lochmoy 140 years ago tomorrow, so the 4th of June 1881, which opens with the words: "The members of the Field Club had an excursion on the 4th of June to Strathnairn and Strathdown. The subjects on the card included the distribution of the old red sandstone, the glacial drift, especially the debris in the Craggy Burn Valley, the history and traditions of Moy Hall, and the relation of the River Findhorn to the watershed of the Nairn. The party started from Mr. Grant's coach office at 11:30, and the rest of a long summer's day was occupied with the excursion. The leaders, Mr. Kenneth MacDonald and Mr. James Fraser, CE, had studied the historical and geological details with great care and completeness." I love the image that conjures up of them all meeting at the coach office, and then a long summer's day being spent in pursuit of all those different objectives. Or how about this one? This is from 120 years later than that first one. This is from the 16th of June 2001, report into the field excursion to Assynt. "Sutherland, a land of contrasts. 2,200 square miles, 5,700 square kilometres, with a population of around 13,000, making it one of the least densely populated areas in Europe, under 6 persons per square mile. To the west, a broad band of rugged and rocky hills runs north-south down the coast, rising out of a plateau of hard gneiss rock. This is an area of fascinating geology. Many of the isolated hills are famous for their unusual and dramatic shapes, hills like Sullivan and Arkle. Innumerable lochs and lochans stipple the ground and are drained by short, swift rivers, many containing salmon. The people live in small fishing and crofting communities, generally on the coast. To appreciate Sutherland fully, many visits are necessary, if possible at all times of the year. Nevertheless, even the first-time visitor will surely agree that the contrasts of climate and scenery make the country worth visiting again and again. It is recorded that man has lived in Sutherland since the end of the last ice age, some 10,000 years ago. Bone caves, excavations of which have produced the bones of animals of the last ice age, and suggestions of habitation by Upper Paleolithic man, Stone Age dwellers. Consider also the presence of moss campion, a survivor of the last ice age and present in abundance in the limestone at Knockin, and with other Arctic and Alpines purple saxifrage, and on the far north coast, the very special Primula scotica, the Scottish primrose, as well as many other rarities. This makes for not just a geologist's mecca, but a plant hunter's paradise as well. And so you really get the idea that broad brushstroke of what they're looking at, what they're studying. And of course, with that one being 120 years later, the ability to go to Sutherland for a day trip being very much easier. These excursions and lectures were often written up in local newspapers. The Banffshire Journal, for instance, recorded a trip to Milton Quarry near Avis in Murray, and a trip to Burghead fortifications and Cummingston Quarry, and it records that while they were at Cummingston Quarry, they found a newly quarried slab with distinctly reptilian footmarks. And often excursions were made in collaboration with other organisations such as Nairn Literary Society or the Rossshire Philosophical Society, and a range of others. For instance, one example is from 1919, when the members, as part of the Northern Association of Scientific Societies, joined with members of, and I'm going to have to read them to you, so this is the Inverness Field Club, joined with members of the Aberdeen Philosophical Society, the Buchan Club, the Banffshire Field Club, the Elgin Literary Society and Field Club, for a tour of Strathbogie, Donside and Deeside. And that was the first joint excursion that they'd made since 1914, because of course the war had come in between. And yes, Elizabeth, I'm seeing your comment of Caithness Field Club as well. all those similar organisations tying in with each other. In addition to the reports being published in the newspapers, for the first 50 years of its life, the Inverness Field Club published its transactions in 9 volumes. But gradually, as is so often the case, the costs rose, it became unsustainable to continue with that. But those first volumes can be found in libraries, and they are still very useful when researching many aspects of Highland geology, geography, science, and wider culture. Inverness Field Club has also assisted in the publication of articles, standalone articles within scientific and antiquarian journals more widely, and it continues to play a role in supporting researchers, and you can find out more about that on their website if you would like to do so. In addition, several standalone books and articles have been published by the Field Club or by members of the Field Club. And I wanted to give a few examples to show that, again, the breadth of subject material. So in 1971's The Dark Ages in the Highlands. During the 1980s there were Inverness Miscellanies published. The 17th Century in the Highlands, a very useful book. There's also a wide range of notes and lecture papers published on diverse subjects such as the Fishing Heritage of the North Coast, which was published in 2010, Inverness in Highland History, which was published in 1965, 2009's Swords and Smelting in the Iron Age, but such a wide range of other subjects, everything from dolphins and the clearances and droving, talking about last week's subject, railways, the impact of the National Health Service, all sorts of really diverse subject material. Some of the most that we have most commonly used within our search of Field Club publications are 1978's Old Inverness in Pictures, which is a very, very useful book full of beautiful pictures of Inverness in the past, and 1975's The Hub of the Highlands, the Book of Inverness and District, which was published in 1975 to mark the Field Club's centenary. So you can see the diversity of subjects that the Field Club has been involved in researching and promoting, and also you can see why the use of the word science in our modern understanding is far too narrow. And so by the 1970s there was an awareness that what people thought of when they heard the word scientific society had changed over the 100 years. And so in 1973 the rules were reviewed, although very few changes made, and the Inverness Scientific Society and Field Club officially became Inverness Field Club. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the Field Club is still going strong, it's still accepting new members and still operating a programme of lectures and talks and Field Club field studies and excursions, as I say, depending on what the current restrictions are at any given time. So do go on and have a look at their website and find out more about what they do and what they're doing coming up. But I wanted to finish by going back onto the subject of some of the Field Club presidents. So I mentioned that these have included some really notable people. So Alexander Ross, of course, the architect, James Barron, the Inverness Courier editor, Kenneth MacDonald, who was the provost, and if any of you know the story of the Bible which came into, we were contacted with by somebody who had found a Bible across, I think in America, had found a Bible with a name in it and an address and wanted to reunite it with the family, and it turned out to be the family of Kenneth MacDonald, who had been the provost of Inverness, but also involved in as a president of the Field Club. And then, of course, in recent years, the presidents of the Field Club are people that are known to us in our search rooms across the 4 Highland Archive Service centres. So people like like Eileen McCaskill and others who have come in, used our collections extensively, researched, produced pieces of writing. The recent presidents and the recent members are people that we have worked with a lot and know well. And I wanted to finish by mentioning 2 of those, Jeff and Margaret Gill. And I saw earlier, I think Anne it was, who had referenced Margaret Gill. So I wanted to just finish by mentioning them. Between them, Jeff and Margaret, who were married, between them dedicated many, many years of service and support to Inverness Field Club. They were both presidents and they were both regular users of our search room and well known to our team. Jeff passed away in 2004 and Margaret in April last year, 2020. And when the restrictions allow, there will be an event to mark Margaret's huge contribution to the story of Inverness Field Club. But in the meantime, friends and colleagues and associates of Margaret will be planting a rowan tree and erecting a bench in her memory in the community garden next to Culloden Library. And I think it's important. I spend a lot of time and I talk a lot about looking back and remembering key people who have been involved in decision making, key people who have played an important role in the story of a society or an institution or an organisation. But I think it's important that we continue to note and mark those who are making a difference now, who will be the names that people look back on in the future. So if you would like to find out more about the Field Club, or if you'd like to contribute to Margaret's memorial, then please visit the Inverness Field Club website. You'll find a little bit more about the work of Jeff and Margaret Gill and the Field Club in general. If you'd like to find out more about the Inverness Field Club collections that we look after, then please do visit our website. The catalogue is on there, it's searchable, or if you're able to do so, get in touch with us and come in and have a look at some of these amazing records I've been talking about. I'm delighted that I've been able to finish on time. I'm astonished I've been able to finish on time, but it's just as well because I'm going on to give a talk at 12 o'clock about the Learn with Lorna series and how we run it and what we've done, so it's worked out well timing wise. Thank you so much for joining me. Before I do my usual rounding off, I have seen a couple of comments coming up that I want to reply to. Stuart, the bull, which is an absolutely beautiful piece of material that I got in Egypt, is on the other side of my windowsill now. So thank you for noticing. Leslie, I see your comment there about not getting a notification until 11. If you register interest in attending the event, so go onto our Facebook page, the event will come up. If you click that you're attending, you should get an earlier reminder for that. Thank you for joining me. Please do join me next week. I'll be looking at stories hidden in the landscape. I'm also going to be putting up some new events this afternoon or tomorrow. I'll be advertising the next set of Learn with Lornas. So when they come up, if you want to attend, please mark on the event that you want to attend, and then you'll get reminders for it. Thank you for joining me, and a reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. That High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and that there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this series of events, but if you're able to donate towards our work, then we would very much appreciate that. So thank you.